Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered. We're on Xbox One X, which is giving a 4K resolution with HDR support and a number of other features. Story-wise, you initially play as this particular character, and then there's a bit of a shift in the narrative as you go along with your sort of gang and your group, and you kind of meet characters and deal with other people along the way. Did I just drop that musket so we could pick it up? But yeah, generally it's an interesting story, and I'll try not to spoil things in regards to covering where things kind of go in regards to the shift in characters, but it's a very sort of interesting narrative that's a little bit more, I don't know, dynamic, or at least different in comparison to what the other Creed games have presented in the past, just in terms of changing your perspectives over time. And this is like a few sequences in. The game takes place in the new land. You're in Boston here, and then you go to some of the side areas, and you actually have to load out different territories, like actually load and go to new spots. But it is it's fairly fast to do that. The loading in this game is quick paced, and it all runs quite smoothly, you know, just in comparison to the original version on the last gen. And you do get the option on this platform on Xbox to either play the title through backwards compatibility or to enjoy this remastered version of the game. So benefits aside from the resolution improvements and the HDR support include general mechanic improvements. Jeez, I'm getting like shot and attacked by guys. One sec. General mechanic improvements, higher resolution textures. You get new character models and improved lighting rendering system. There's also physically based rendering, denser crowds, denser environments, and denser VFX, which are all boosting kind of the look, the style, and the design of the world. I think the textures hold up quite well. I mean, you get some really nice looking rock areas, but it is a different sort of Creed because, you know, taking place in this type of area. The landscape is a little bit more flat, so the buildings aren't quite as climbable as they are in a number of the other Creeds, where they've got these cityscapes going on. That's not to say there aren't a lot of buildings that you can't climb on, but it is a little bit more limited, and you're a little bit out of your usual comfort zone when you go to areas like the frontier, because it's largely flat and there's not really many city type buildings that you're able to explore while you're there. I'm actually supposed to be there for a mission, but I'm going through the main area fighting people, apparently. Yes, it's actually got a very interesting opening segment, and the setup here sort of acts as a conclusion point to the present, quote-unquote, storyline in regards to Desmond and what he's doing with the particular special artifact of the Ancients. You know, in case you are familiar with past titles at this point before going into Remastered. This package also includes Liberation. I did a separate video for Liberation because I thought I should give that one its own little showcase, but I will mention that both of the titles are included as one package that you select when you go to actually start a game. And you got like cool side guns. You can use a musket and just shoot people too, which is kind of fun. But yeah, both the titles are included. I wanted to split up the videos just so I could give more of a focus on Liberation itself, because I think that actually is the better of the two titles. This one obviously a lot more content because it's a mainline game, but that one holds up a little bit better. I've noticed a number of issues in terms of general performance and gameplay in this one. There are cinematics where there's floating guns and no characters. Sometimes the characters are in a T position and there's floating guns. Sometimes even when you're regularly playing, there's just floating guns moving around. I found a lot of clipping issues, characters running into one another. With the denser streets, I'm assuming the pathing is a little bit different, which is causing some issues. You do get some weathering effects, which is kind of neat. You know, kind of like rain or snow and everything like that. And I think it's a neat mix, kind of going from this sort of badass type assassin guy to a different type of character. It's just a very interesting shift. Oh, and they got cool things like this where it's little cinematic movements. Hi, guys. And I mean, you get all the movement of the assassin. Sometimes the climbing is a little bit off on this one, but it's not terrible. I am a monster. Guard dog. I don't know, I think he kind of sticks out like a bit of a sore thumb in terms of being an assassin, but, you know, whatever, they do what they do. It's got an interesting narrative to it, I suppose, and it's definitely something that's a little bit different Creed-wise, just because you are part of an ensemble as opposed to being an individual character. There's moments where you're commanding things. It has the sailing segment, which I'm not a fan of, but I know a lot of Creed people quite enjoy the sailing. So this is like sort of, you know, the humble beginnings of that particular venture for the franchise that eventually really grew to being like a core part of the Creed experiences. But as you can see, moving past issues, the crowd density is really nice. Usually when it's not like blizzarding, I don't know, there's a lot going on. Still, it's got more of an empty style to it. Is that guy walking around with a pig behind him? No, they're different. The streets seem a little bit like they're wide, but there's not a whole lot going on. I do really love the authenticity of the Creed titles in regards to capturing really dense and realistic worlds at the time, and this one gets it, but there's just not quite as much going on. It's very much a empty type street scenario, but there's denser crowds obviously with the improvement, which is nice. There's a lot of sort of pop-in regards to the environment. It's not too noticeable, but there are many segments where you're kind of walking around and you're seeing certain objects pop in as you're going along. And I noticed that a lot with the shadows. Some of the shadows seem to at least bloom out or appear a little bit more as you get to certain destinations. Performance-wise, Boston is quite good, but when you travel to some of the side areas, there's a little bit dips. I noticed in the Frontier it seems to dip down a fair bit. Little bits of performance issues there, but for the most part it is fairly rock solid. I would have liked them to maybe polish things a little bit more. It's nice that we're able to enjoy all the Creed titles on the modern platform without, having to switch to anything else. I think that's kind of nice, but at the same time, it's like if this is going to be your primary Creed version of 3, which it will be for a long time because it's the remastered version, until they do some kind of like 8K effort or something down the road, this is going to be the definitive version to play it, right? And it's just kind of weird that this one doesn't quite have as much polish as some of the other remastered titles have. But there is that nice option of being able to go back and play the 360 version with the improvement options, so that's good if you're into that. The game also comes loaded with all of the DLC that released for it, all of the content as one package, so that's kind of nice. And I guess if you're a fan of this title, I'm getting just completely stabbed up here, you're going to be able to enjoy going back and playing it again if that is something that you desire. I mean, there's nothing that's like a huge grab that's going to be like, wow, they've completely revamped this experience, but it's kind of nice to come back and give it a revisit, I suppose, if that's something that you want out of the game. I think the narrative's kind of interesting, and perhaps give Liberations a nice try, because that one's also quite a bit of fun to kind of work through. So map-wise, there's obviously just tons of collectibles, there's things to jump on, there's stores, there's side missions, the main sequences. Again, there's only a few sequences in, and I thought it was a good point where I'm not really spoiling any of the actual narrative elements that are, part of this. You do get a variety in the environments in terms of where you're going, and we're going to head over to the actual Frontier here so that you can see what a different part of the game actually does look like, aside from just assassinating and cutting up some street people. And to do that, we're going to call our good and fun friend the horse. Now we can ride along with, where are you? Come on, buddy. I do like the sense that you can also pick up certain objects in the environment too. Things like muskets, and they're sort of like a temporary type item. I think that kind of option kind of just changes the setting and the dynamics in regards to combat, and it makes the missions have a little bit more of a twist to them at times. I do notice that the sensitivity in regards to spotting is a little ridiculous in this. I've noticed some issues with that in regards to some of the quests where you have to tail people or you have to listen or watch them. They're a little bit overly touchy or even glitchy at times, and that's a little bit disappointing. I thought they would have maybe put a little bit more of an effort in regards to cleaning up some of the core mechanics of the game. Not to say they didn't do a good job, bringing this title back, but I just felt there could have been more that they, should have done, just to make sure that when this version, people kind of go in the future to play this version of Creed, the third title, that they have something that's a little bit more polished and put together. It also would have been maybe nice to have some like footprint interaction. Like, it's weird here, you don't really get that, but in the Frontier, some of the areas where there's thicker snow, you get snow deformation. So it's kind of weird to see that only applied in certain areas. And again, not the whole game isn't snow based. You do get regular, you know, summertime and everything like that. It just so happens at the point of the sequence it's transferred into a snow cycle, or at least setting, visual wise, which is interesting. Typically you know where you're going. Navigation's not too hard in this one. You do get some fast travel points. They are sort of minimal in regards comparing it to the other more modern Creed titles. And I guess this is one of the ones that was a stepping stone towards the next generation. It was just before then. And you can see some of the modern techniques and mechanics that the current Creed titles have kind of come from this one. Or at least some of the development was pushed towards that. Again, sailing being a prime example of that. It still had that fun style where you can go in and sort of just take out the main bad guy. But it was totally glitched when I did that in this fort segment. That's where I mainly saw a ton of floating guns and characters that weren't loaded in. So you can see the loading screens return, but it's significantly faster to get through. It's really not a whole big deal. A little bit longer when you are loading up new segments as a new larger land masses, but still pretty quick, as you can see. Fast change. I think the visuals are fairly good. Again, you see like clipping with like the coat and everything like that kind of looks bad. Some of the facial animations are a bit awkward to look at. They definitely have not held up well. I actually think Liberation held up a little bit better, but I don't know if that's quite a fair comparison, because Liberation started out as like a Vita type title, and then it was given a remaster sort of for the arcade last generation, and now it's gotten a boost on top of that. So I don't know really the development behind that one as compared to this, because they did release basically I think around the same time basically, but they did have a sort of different development track. This one was left alone. The other one did get the little tweaks and stuff over time, which is interesting. But yeah, you're seeing the Frontier. It's a very different type of Creed place because there's very few buildings. It's open. It's snow based. You're gonna have to use different tactics in order to deal with enemies here. Environment wise, you do still blend into it. If you're going to crowds, you can kind of rest against the wall or sit down on a bench. I think the character hilariously sticks out in a crowd, but you know, whatever, you gotta do what you gotta do, right? And yeah, aside from that, you can hold the bumper here and you can sort of adjust the weapons you have. You can go pick up new weapons from the shop and do an easy assign type method. Going back to the bumper, you can see the legend. A lot of things going on. You can do like hunting stuff and see targets and where you're supposed to go and sync points, key characters. It is historic being a Creed title, so you do get to see many key people in the new land, specifically Boston around this specific time. This full logbook lets you know everything that's going on in the game, so you are fairly well informed in what's happening. But I'd rather get to more foot-based stuff, so that's why we're leaving the horse behind, just so you can see more of how the game sort of renders while you're moving around on foot, because that is where you spend quite a lot of the time. Attack this rabbit. Nice shot. Yeah. Really good shot. When it comes to the HUD, it's largely a clean interface. Oh, here you're seeing the snow deformation, and you don't see that at all on even like the smaller snow, which is a bit weird. Like, you'd think you'd see footprints or something. I don't know. That's just my thought on it. But yeah, HUD, very cinematic in style. It's very clean. Bottom left, you have your map. You see your health bar, your money, key points on the map. Your right has your weapons in the bottom right corner, and the top has basically an info thing in regards to your inputs, what you're supposed to do. You can do like a fast walk. You can do your attack. You can do a reflex shot. You know, stuff like that. Is just an easy to see segment, which I think works quite well. Do I have my hidden blades out as opposed to my sword, which is probably not a good idea. There are a lot of options for fighting. You can take sort of meat shields to block against actual bullets, because there are guns in this. not just all knives. Jeez. And you can also grab people's guns when you do a parry, which is kind of an interesting technique. And the game does mix up combat quite a bit. Like sometimes you get like hand to hand. There was a bar scene where you gotta fight all these guys and you're like throwing them over tables, and I guess that's fun. Kind of get my sword out. There we go. And we're just kind of taking these guys out just so you get a little bit more action on what's going on experience-wise. In the top left, you'd see a missions sort of list, like your objectives. Every mission has some side objectives that you can work on, and you get a ranking at the end of it based on your performance. You know, did you do stealth well? Did you kill a certain amount of people with like a certain gun technique? And you gotta kind of get used to the guns in this too, because they are different based on the time. The muskets take a long time to reload, so you've gotta kind of be wary of that if you are gonna be taking the gun route and shooting people, because you gotta reload and you have to deal with that balancing of gunplay against some weapons that are out there. You get some cool slow motion segments as you jump off of buildings. I guess my horse is following me. Should we go over to the mission? Yeah, we'll go over to the mission. It's just kind of neat seeing this older version of the horse on here. This is the main mission where we're gonna, I guess, sort of sneak up on a camp. I don't really like to jump into stuff that could ruin the narrative, but I think this one is alright. Because you still are early in the game. This is before there's a big shift. You've teamed up with this mysterious woman, and you're going around doing stuff together and assassinating people. And you're playing as Kenway right now. He's a complete dick, so that's kind of fun to watch. He's just got like a piss poor attitude. We're gonna skip cinematics so you don't have anything wrecked, but yeah, we're gonna go in here. Do not kill any weapons either. Guards using a weapon. That's no fun.
I can hide in that cart.
Yeah, sure, we can do that. And you got people that are with you. They're usually quite smart. There we go. Did she get in here too, or? I know, as you can see, the mission's not popped up there. You can have chat on the bottom. Well, captions, I guess, so you know what's going on. Subtitles. And there we go, that's it. But you can see a fairly large world. I was hoping to sort of hit like a high point at one point in regards to getting a long distance. You get a fairly good draw distance, but it's still got quite a bit of a fog around it. And I don't think they did a whole lot to adjust that, but I assume maybe performance and stuff like that, you know, was an issue that they were taking into consideration when doing that. It's just kind of like you go to a high point, and then you look up. Ooh, hopefully they don't see me. And, I don't know, I was just kind of hoping to see more going on there. You guys don't see me. Nothing's happening here. Don't worry about it. Nothing going on. It's a guy climbing a roof. Don't worry about it. You can zoom in with your gun too if you want to like take a shot from a distance. I guess we're supposed to stay in range. Yeah, I found actually going on roofs sometimes is a little bit better for these missions where you have to like listen to people, because otherwise certain things glitch and I'm just kind of moving around sporadically here. This is not smart of me. I don't know how this is working. We're gonna take it though. And I mean, you can be stealthy, you can move through bushes and hide into stuff. I'm just not exactly playing it too smartly. Reduce to which one? That one over there? That's a bit of a run. Yeah. Anyways, I think this is like a decent effort in regards to bringing back this title. If you like it, it's worth checking out. If you weren't a fan of this game, you probably won't want to revisit because there's nothing too crazy to draw you into it. It is a good package in regards to being bundled with Liberation as well, so you get the two games in this. There's quite a lot of gameplay, collectibles to get, missions to do, a large story that is a key point in the Creed series in regards to seeing many different things that go on later. Some of the other titles, if you're not familiar with them, it ties into quite a few of them, but I don't really want to go over that element of it, because that is the story, right, and it kind of gets spoiled if you chat about it. Whoa, get into the That's so stupid. But anyways, that is Assassin's Creed 3 Remastered. I hope you enjoyed this look at it on Xbox One X.